Welcome to the Friday show. We've got a whole bunch of new segments planned for you today. We've got This Week in Show History. We have the behind the scenes and post-mortem of one of the crazier interviews that we had on this program. We have our audience questions segment. It's kind of like the expanded voicemail segment. And at the top of the show, we'll talk about some stories we did not get to during the week. Sam Harris has tweeted that if you complain when Muslim theocrats abuse Muslim women and free thinkers, you will be accused of anti-Muslim bigotry. Amazing. There's a lot to talk about in that quote. And Sam Harris is kind of a public intellectual, non-religious thinker, neuroscientist, I believe. I've read one of his books, The Moral Landscape, and this is where we need to separate two issues. On the one hand, there is no question that Muslims are disproportionately discriminated against for their religion in the U.S. and in many other countries, but we'll focus on the U.S. here, relative to other religions, right? This includes how they're portrayed in the media. This includes reactions when someone simply enters the room wearing traditional Muslim attire. This includes being shown as violent way more often in movies based on their Muslim faith. That is one issue, and we need to address that and be cognizant of that as it comes to Muslims in general. However, concurrent with that issue, there is the problem that sometimes when you do criticize Muslim extremism as a religion problem, in the same way that we criticize Christian extremism and Catholic and Jewish extremism, as we did on this program this week when it came to the anti-gay so-called therapy, sometimes, as Sam Harris states, you will be called an anti-Muslim, racist, or xenophobe. They are two separate issues, Lewis, and we need, number one, to recognize that average Muslims, much like average Jews or average Christians, don't deserve to be discriminated against simply because they follow the Muslim faith in general society, and at the same time, not have any special exemption because of that when it is Muslims that are engaged in extremist religious activity or beliefs.
Right. It's a line. I think it's a pretty clear line. But I mean, at the core of this, it's really about everything. You have to be able to criticize anything and everything, right?
Really what you're saying, Lewis, is if you have a specific reason to criticize an action, an incident, a person, a belief, then you should be able to do that with no particular scrutiny based on the group or association of that individual action, etc. But at the same time, we don't want to be discriminating against huge groups of people simply because of their general affiliation with a group. Now, there is a difference, right? Because if you say, well, why is it unfair to generalize about Muslims, period, without distinction for whether they are extremist Muslims or not, in the same way that we could make the distinction with Christians. But at the same time, when it comes to Scientologists, it seems to be much more acceptable to discriminate or generalize overall. And when I proposed that to myself in preparing for this segment, I realized, well, maybe we just have to take every issue individually. I mean, the reason why it is much more likely that if you are a Scientologist, you are an extremist, than if you are a Muslim, you are an extremist, is because Scientology is such a new religion. We are only now getting secondary generations of Scientologists, meaning that most Scientologists for a really long time were individuals who left their prior religion or chose this religion if they were previously agnostic or atheistic because they so sincerely believed in the literal teaching. So there actually is an explanation there.
There is, and it's too bad that you can have people who are complete polar opposites on each end of the spectrum and yet still call themselves the exact same thing. So it makes it difficult. It makes things really difficult.
It does. Send me your thoughts on this. Send me your thoughts on how do we categorize, how do we make rules about what types of criticisms are okay or not? Can we even make general rules about that? Or do these things need to be handled on a one-on-one basis? This is viewer-supported independent media. Please support our program by going to davidpakman.com/membership and becoming a member today.